This is a special presentation of News Center 6.
Good evening. I'm Jack Aernecke. Welcome to a look into Russian society we call To Russia with Love. A month ago this evening, almost to this very hour, I returned from a visit to Albany's sister city of Tula, Russia, about 120 miles south of Moscow. Tula was picked because it's a regional government center like Albany. It produces weapons like nearby Watervliet. It has several places of higher learning like the capital region. And it has a river, though much smaller than the Hudson. We were some of the first Americans to visit Tula since before World War II. Because Tula is an arms manufacturing center, starting in the early Stalin years, it was closed to foreigners. The city has some 600,000 people, and in many ways, it and they mirror the real Russia, not the tourist parts of Moscow and St. Petersburg and Kiev, but the rest of Russia, the strengths and the weaknesses of the country. We felt the best way to tell the story of Tula was through the hopes and the hearts and the eyes of a Tula family. And you'll meet them in just 1 minute.
To Russia with Love is sponsored by Mohawk Ambulance and by Smart Deal Network.
Last holiday season, many of you donated clothing and money to help the people of Tula cope with the end of communism and the struggle toward democracy. Let's follow your gifts to Russia with love. Videographer Ed Curley and I spent a full day with the 7 members of the Pantyukhin family in their 4-room apartment. 36-year-old Alexander is clearly the head of the household, with his wife, 3 children, and the grandparents. Alexander repairs automatic fire extinguishing equipment. Wife Irene cleans at a school. And while they work, grandmother Nadezhda and grandfather Vladimir watch the children and help with the household chores. The Pantyukhins have celebrated the end of communism and are now struggling with democracy's higher prices.
We have to become more economical.
You wouldn't know it, though, when the big guest table is set up in the living room and there is a sumptuous meal for us, joined by our translator and some city officials. We asked the city of Tula officials to select a typical family for us to visit with for a day, and the Pantyukhins were the family selected. One way, though, Alexander may not be typical is pay. His has climbed as much as food prices have climbed. A big example, a bag of flour, which used to cost a half ruble, now costs 12.5 rubles. The price climbed in just a few months. Alexander says the now private company he works for has been able to make enough money to keep going, but he knows of others who've been laid off.
But we have some cases that there is a reduction of those who work.
But that is not something that he has to worry about.
Значит, у вас уже есть чем волноваться. Ну да. Yes, in a way.
As for the 4-room apartment they live in, the rent has stayed the same, but other living costs are rising.
The pay for the apartment is okay. It hasn't gone up.
Подорожали услуги. Lift,
and the service has gone up. Elevator, and gas, and water.
How much are those services going up?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
We pay as it was before.
I see. But it will be going up. You don't know how much yet.
Если поднимется, пока еще не знаете.
Нет, просто потом сделаем перерасчет. Мы знаем, что мы поднимемся, только не знаем насколько.
They counted again and they'll take the whole amount of money.
We visited Alexander and his family on a Saturday, often a day of relaxation with the family.
I do my homework or walk, and in the summer we have dacha. Summer cottage.
Summer cottage.
Да, подсобное хозяйство, мы взгляд взяли.
We have chicken hens.
Yeah, here in the apartment, I hear them.
Да, да.
The baby chicks occupy a small room. In spring, when they're bigger, they'll be moved on a bus to the family dasha, nearly an hour's bus ride out of Tula. Some of the family will sleep at the dasha on weekend nights, but it's not vacation. It's work, growing vegetables, which are critical.
Having chickens and all that stuff is the way of surviving.
The canned vegetables and chicken meat become a major part of the winter diet, supplemented by patiently waiting online in stores.
Maybe 1 hour and a half.
Okay.
It depends on what I want to buy.
Food shopping is done daily, and the family often spends 230 rubles for food at a time. Considering Alexander's salary is probably 1,000 rubles a month, you can see how important it is to grow food and have a working mother and grandparents on pension, all pooling their money. Clothing is also a burden. The lines are not any shorter, and the prices are higher.
And also, it was also difficult, and now we have a lot of money. A very small amount of money.
I understand. I got to tell you, I was a little concerned visiting the Pantyukhins. We had a midday meal which absolutely filled the table. With all the stories of shortages and hunger, frankly, I was worried about the family's generosity to us. Would they do without after we left the city? Tula city officials told me in typical Russian fashion, no problema, don't worry. It took a couple of days before someone finally admitted the city helped with supplies and expenses to make sure the Pantyukhins wouldn't suffer because of their generosity. Still, we sampled many items which are the products of successful summer gardening, things which no amount of government help can provide. Sour cream in your borscht?
Yeah, a little bit.
Actually, it was more like cabbage soup. There were also preserved vegetables, a little bit of meat, a lot of homemade pastry. For us, just a little bit of vodka and lots of tea. A weekend activity enjoyed often is a visit to the park. We joined Alexander as he took son Roman and daughter Katya. Tula has a couple of very large parks. The colorful displays are children's stories. There is a bandstand where piped-in music changed it to an impromptu dance floor, primarily women dancing with women, except for one neighborhood Don Juan. The park has lots of rides. It's almost like a Hoffman's Playland, but these rides go all winter. Some of the rides are strictly for children. Others allow bigger kids, too. There is a charge for them, and it's climbed in recent months. The ride is really kind of expensive. Even by American standards. About 1 ruble. Considering the high cost of many other items, one has to watch each ruble. But this mild Saturday in early March, many people seem to enjoy the outdoors in the city park. When we got back to Alexander's apartment, while supper was in final preparation, the Pantyukhins did what many of us do, watch television. They get 5 channels on cable, including... Yes, it's everywhere, MTV. My translators say this is their favorite station because it's great practice in vernacular English, not the type learned out of books. And there are cartoons. We watched Rambo, originally produced in America. This version had Finnish subtitles and one woman providing the Russian translation for all the parts.
The wax imprint of the Count's ring is very unusual.
The TV station that serves Tula is located 60 kilometers east of the city, over an hour's drive away on very rough road. Why so far away? The answer is an official shrug with some Russian humor. They say it makes as much sense as taking a bath and then having to cross the road to get dressed. The television news the Russians watch is almost exclusively what the government is doing. There is very little reporting of other things. And many of them were trying to figure out what we were covering when we took pictures of people and buildings and life, rather than those government meetings. We here will very often get a story on the air live, or have edited tape and a report within an hour of an event. In Tula, they'll often work on coverage of the day's happenings for a day or two, get it on the air, and still call it news. They're still learning the concept of free press and competition. When we come back, a closer look at Tula TV and how it compares with what you're watching right now.
Олега сейчас вам покажет его работы. В студии тоже снимает материал и от Curley.
Tula TV is a regional television station, much like WRGB, but with one significant difference. There is no local competition. There are other, more subtle differences. If you look at the equipment, you see some which is very much up to date. The audio console drew some raves from our technicians. Other equipment they use daily has been retired here for decades. For example, while we use primarily videotape, Tula TV still uses a lot of 16mm film. They still have a film processor which looks a lot like one we discarded 15 years ago. And organization is different. When we arrived, employees were having a meeting. They were having a problem with the station chairman, the boss, and they were discussing replacing him. No decision made. When I was on the air, interviewed in a half-hour show with several journalists and other employees, I was asked about how American bosses are picked and how I liked their method. I admitted their way does have a certain attraction. While in the community where the TV station is located, I was told this area got a pretty good dose of radiation from the Chernobyl nuclear plant accident. Government officials say it's safe, but people told me privately they don't believe it. I sometimes wonder if this visit will affect the length of my life. Let's go back to the other end of the broadcast signal, at the Pantyukhin's living room. It's supper time, time for another sumptuous and very different meal. This time we sat down to a main course of blini. For dinner, we were encouraged, use your hands to eat. So you reach right over and grab what is a pancake, actually a very thin folding pancake. Some of you might call it a blintz. This is very familiar to what I grew up with, being from European German heritage. We used to call these Eierkuchen, and yet you put in jam and honey, anything like that, and just fold them over, put them in your hands, and scarf them down. The jam was also home-preserved and outstanding. After dinner, I pulled out pictures of my home to share with the Pantyukhins. They marvel at the size of my, by American standards, relatively modest three-bedroom ranch and the two vehicles I own, although they marveled with humor.
Also three types of car. Trolleybus, bus, and tramway.
I showed pictures of here at work. The station I work for is called WRGB Channel 6.
Канал 6. WRGB.
Then the family pulled out their pictures and shared times in their life with me, like vacations at the Black Sea. The norm is 4 weeks vacation a year in Russia, and a Black Sea vacation used to be very inexpensive. Now the Pantyukhins can't afford one. And there's Christmas, but under communism there was no religious significance. And who is this fellow? What is he called? We would call him Santa Claus.
Дед Мороз. Father the Frost.
Father Frost, okay. And like many fathers here, Alexander gets in the act too. Oh, that is you?
Yeah.
Ah! Religion is once again becoming an important factor in Russian society, and families are no longer worried about mixing life and religion.
I hardly can say that we will believers, but all the children and they are baptized.
The Pantyukhin family tie is very strong, each looking out for the other. I talked to them about the changes that they can expect in their society over the years should democracy succeed, and about our country's, this country's, higher divorce rate. I urge them, no matter what the changes and temptations that those changes bring, hold and protect those family ties. They are entirely too precious to lose. Despite the joy and closeness inside the apartment, tough economic reality is just outside the door. Alexander looked at my 35mm camera and asked me how much it cost and how long I had to work before I could buy it. The price, $174. I told him that it took me about 6 hours of work to earn the money for this camera. He shook his head and told me it would take him 17 months to earn that much if he didn't feed his family. Economic development has a long way to go. We exchanged gifts and parted with a warm sense of friendship. Pictures of our visit are on their way. I hope they write back, even in Russian. I'll get it translated. The Pantyukhins and most other Russian families have an opportunity approaching, the chance to buy their apartment. A lot of problems have to be worked out yet by the government, but privatization is on the horizon. And one of my interpreters, Irene Kuznetsova, clearly expressed the wish of many people that they have the right to own.
If we have a look at the animals world, and we see quite well that every animal has its own territory, yes, and it takes care of this territory, yes, and every animal has its own hole, and so we're also animals, but only we are Homo sapiens. So there is not, there isn't a great difference between us, but we are more clever, and that's why we also we must be the sample for the animals, you see. So that's quite impossible for us to have something private, you see.
And that is important for you.
Yes, it's important for me, and I think that it's important for other people also. And we have many examples when people now, well, in our country, for example, in our city, they make an attempt to have, well, the private, to buy a shop, just to be the owner of the shop. They organize private firms, and they work excellently. They work much better in their private firms than they work, for example, in the public firms.
But Kuznetsova feels the huge number of street vendors now is going a little too far.
I'd like to have very good shop. I'd like that there will be many shops in our town, for example, yes. They were good organized, they were clean, there were a great diversity of food and other things we need. So, and I'd like to come in this shop, and the owner or the shop assistant or the shop call said to me, welcome, and he served me up to the level. I'll buy everything I want, and I'll leave this shop very happy and dignified.
The process to create the shops, which will let Irene feel happy and dignified, started with Mikhail Gorbachev's Perestroika movement. But it faced a very significant moment of truth last August during the coup attempt. Remember those scenes? Last August, we saw crowds of people and tanks in Moscow, people who got a taste of freedom and democracy and wanted to hang on to it, who didn't want to go back to communism. They took to the streets, tried to block tanks, and pleaded with military officers. But the public square in Tula had just as much drama. There was a whole crowd of people here, a crowd of people hoping democracy wins. Government leaders were closeted in Tula's government building, the White House, working to counter the coup. The head of the city council, the highest elected official, Nikolai Tutanov, went out of town to the Tula helicopter battalion and literally stared down the commander. That battalion had been put on alert to attack the Moscow White House, to attack Boris Yeltsin, to attack his government and kill it. Tutanov, through a translator, described that 2-hour tension-filled meeting and the fear in his belly.
During 2 hours, we had a hot debate concerning all these matters, personal, political, some money problems were discussed, and so on. We had to exert maximum of pressure in our effort to persuade these people into correct reaction and to remember them of the glory of the Russian people and of everything the very best. But after the meeting we were not sure that we have completely succeeded, and the possibility of their attacking still existed. After we left the commander's office and had an opportunity of talking to one of the officers, we realized that no attack will occur. They have removed some vital components of the helicopters so that they've actually grounded them. Some of the helicopters had been charged with dump cartridges, and the rest of the helicopters, or the rest of the crews, were ready to take off and attack the helicopters on the ground. And after that, we were completely sure that we have succeeded in our mission, and no attack will occur.
In the beginning of the meeting, in the beginning of this process, was he worried about losing his life? Was he was he in that much danger?
It was it wasn't kind of thought. I was quite sure of it.
That he thought he would lose his life?
I was sure that in case my mission fails, I would die. On the very morning of the 19th of August, I had to have my decision, which side to take. And within 5 minutes, I had recalled all my life, and my primary thought was about my family. But I couldn't betray democracy and the path that I've chosen, so I did my job.
Such a simple phrase, so I did my job. And what a profound impact that simple phrase implies. People like Tutanov and those rank-and-file soldiers who defied orders and sabotaged their helicopters will be the written and unwritten heroes of the failed coup attempt should the democracy movement survive. In a society where the inability to make a decision stands out so dramatically, and it's understandable after 75 years of dictatorship, but it is all the more amazing to find individuals in the right place and at the right time who are willing to put their lives on the line to save a concept they really don't understand, democracy. After our visit to Tula, we went up to Moscow and were able to be tourists for a couple of days. But we were reflective tourists. Some closing thoughts in just a moment.
To Russia with Love is sponsored by Mohawk Ambulance and by Smart Deal Network.
A few final thoughts while standing here at Red Square in Moscow. It is a terrifically large country, a terrifically pretty country, and also a terrifically poor country at this point. The change to democracy is something that we in America have had about 200 years practice at. Over here, they are just learning what democracy is. In fact, they know they want it, but the people don't really know what to do with democracy. The hope is that they will find out soon enough before all of this falls apart. I'm Jack Aernecke, News Center 6 at Red Square in Moscow.